Okay, you're up.
Hi there, I'm Lori Cole, and I'm going to read from the book by Lori Cole and Mishell Baker, and this is Chapter 20, Puzzle Pieces. Well before the town gates opened, Hawk roused Wren and encouraged her to eat breakfast quickly while they waited for Shima to finish mending Falcon's shirt. When Hawk tried to find out what happened to the shirt, he found Falcon strangely reticent. Hawk had no luck getting Falcon to eat. He looked as though he hadn't slept at all. At last Shima entered with Falcon's shirt, and Hawk hurried his siblings out the door. The walk to Irana's piece was tense and silent. Hawk was too riddled with guilt and anxious to make conversation, and even Wren seemed anxious. Hawk's relief was almost painful when he found Owl asleep under Irana's tree, his pale cheek pressed against the pages of his book. Hawk knelt quickly to shake him awake. Hawk! Owl sat bolt upright, his eyes wild. "Are you all right?" said Falcon. "You look terrible." It took a moment for Irana's magic to have its calming effect on Owl, and Hawk noticed that there were dark shadows under his eyes. "I had nightmares," Owl said, "all night long. I kept trying to stay awake and study, but this place makes me so sleepy." "Nightmares?" said Wren, sounding confused. "You're not supposed to have nightmares here." "Did you find the pixies?" Hawk asked. Owl nodded distractedly. "I got some dust from them." "Excellent," said Hawk. "Fine job! I've got some magical fire, so that's 2 ingredients down." 3, said Falcon after a moment's hesitation. "I have a bit of horn that should do for earth magic." Hawk started to ask him for more details, but something in Falcon's expression stopped him. "All right," he said instead. "We're halfway there." "Why did you have nightmares, Owl?" insisted Wren. "You're supposed to dream about your true love if you sleep here." Owl raised an eyebrow. "Well, unless my true love is going to chain me up in a dungeon and let rats gnaw on me, I think that there might be a hole in your theory." Suddenly Hawk realized what they were talking about. "Hey," he said, "I dreamed about a girl when I was here." "That's the girl you're going to someday marry," Wren said with confidence. Hawk felt a strange quiver inside. "Really?" he said slowly, his gaze losing focus as he remembered the dream. "She was so beautiful. About our age. She had these eyes." "Oh, for heaven's sake," scoffed Owl. "Hawk, I thought you were more sensible than this." "Hawk's got a girlfriend," teased Wren. Hawk grinned. "I wish. Hey, Falcon, maybe you should sleep here so you can dream about Amelia." "Focus, Hawk," said Owl irritably. "Right now we're trying to rescue the Baronet." Hawk sighed and folded his arms, frustrated. Sure, the Baron's son was noble and in need of help, but he never read a story about a hero rescuing a guy. Why couldn't he be rescuing some gray-eyed goddess from his dreams instead? Now, her gratitude would certainly be worth earning. "Owl is right," said Falcon firmly. "We need to get all the ingredients for the potion as soon as we can. Heaven knows when that bear might be, might Owl." "So what about the other ingredients?" Owl asked. "Well, it would seem there's no magic by the lake," said Hawk. "I asked the healer." Falcon frowned. "That's right. You said you got fire magic. Where did you find it?" The telltale worry line appeared between his brows. Hawk avoided his brother's eyes. "Well, they were these skulls," he said, "that were guarding a fence. They shot fire out of their eyes. I grabbed one of the fence posts and took the skull to your girlfriend, Amelia. I hear you're some fantastic kisser, Falcon." Falcon did not take the bait. Where did you see a fence with skulls? His eyes widened. Hawk, you didn't go after Baba Yaga. I went to her hut. Big deal. I'm more interested in the fact that you're carrying on with some old woman. I mean, she's got to be at least 25. Falcon flushed, but refused to be sidetracked. So, how is it that you didn't get turned into some sort of animal? Didn't Baba Yaga get upset when you took the skull? Hawk shrugged, hoping Falcon wouldn't sense the nervousness he felt, remembering that still darkened hut. The gate guard is a pain in the butt. He wouldn't let me in the house. Good for him, said Falcon, and lucky for you. That was a really stupid thing to do, Hawk. If she turned you into something, we never would have known where to look for you. Falcon, said Hawk irritably, stop complaining about everything I do. I'm going to have to take some risks. That's part of my job description. Well, said Owl before Falcon could reply, I suggest that you don't go visit Baba Yaga again. Right now, we need to focus on the task at hand, and we're still missing a few ingredients. You can talk about Baba Yaga later. All right, smart guy, said Hawk. So what should we do next? I think you should take Wren back to town before we do anything. Then you can go to the castle and try to get something the baronet owned. I'm going to try to see Erasmus today. Maybe he knows something about water magic. I'm not sure what to do about the bear yet. Why can't I go get something, said Wren. It's my turn. Wren, said Hawk in exasperation, when are you going to get through your head that you're only here because we couldn't leave you alone at the village? A flush darkened Wren's face, and she folded her arms. You guys act like I'm just a baby. So do you, said Hawk bluntly. Now hush, and let's get back to town. I'll show you, said Wren defiantly. Just wait. Hawk scooped up Wren and slung her over his shoulder. She made a strange sound, half giggle and half shriek of fury. All right, guys, Hawk said. Let's make ourselves a potion. The walk to Siegburg from Marana's Peace took Owl twice as long as it would have if he'd walked there from town. Reversing the path he had taken with the pixie Bluebell the night before, Owl found his way back to the fairy ring. He left a single blue flower for Marana's Peace in the center of the ring, then continued on his way. Another hour headed east on a brisk pace, then half an hour of following the eastern edge of the forest. Owl reached the foot of a trail that wound up the side of an oddly smooth mountain. Owl lifted his eyes. Even with his weak vision, he could make out the conical peak of Siegburg, which resembled a mile-high wizard's cap. He could almost make out a tower on top of the peak. Some trick of the distance and light made it appear a strange shade of purple. The trail leading up to it was ridiculously steep. Owl guessed that Erasmus, being powerful and most likely very busy, intended to discourage casual visitors. Owl, however, was far from casual. His pulse raced as he started up the trail. 3 feet ahead of him, a chartreuse sign suddenly appeared out of thin air, and with a sound like a jangle of broken glass. Welcome to Magic Mountain, it read in Silmarian. Owl continued past the sign, which disappeared as he passed. A second sign appeared 6 feet further up the trail, making a rather rude noise as it did so. This one was red, and it said in the local language, "Go home." Owl stared at the sign, uncertain whether he should take its warning. However, after coming this far, it really didn't make any sense to give up now. He adjusted the weight of the book in his rucksack and began to make the long, arduous climb to Erasmus's tower. Halfway up the trail, he began to have second thoughts. His mouth tasted like a rusty nail, and he had a sharp pain under his rib cage that made it hurt to inhale, or exhale for that matter. He was doing a lot of both in high volume. He paused for a moment, leaning his hands on his thighs. When he last straightened up and glanced down the path behind him, he was greeted with a wondrous sight. The chill wind lifted his hair from his sweat-dampened brow, making him shiver as he stared out over the sparkling lake and picturesque slopes under a cloud-studded sky. Al wasn't used to stopping to look around him. It didn't usually do much good. But Siegburg Valley was painted with such broad, magnificent strokes that even Al had no trouble appreciating its beauty. His immediate surroundings, too, were unusually picturesque. The verdant leaves of a low, creeping ground cover broke up the whiteness of the snow that edged the rocky path. Here and there among the green foliage burst a multitude of tiny crystalline blossoms. It occurred to Al that, before Huck had left them, he had seen very little outside of the thatched walls of Aunt Wilhelmina's hut. And yet here he was, standing on the edge of a mountainside, gazing down on a place that before he had only seen on a map. He wished he could see more clearly. His nearsightedness had never much bothered him when all he had worth looking at were books. Perhaps now, once he became trained in magic, he could find a way to make better use of his eyes. With that thought to inspire him, Al continued on his journey. By the time he reached the summit of Zauberberg, however, all he could do was collapse. The entrance to Erasmus's house was on the north face of the slope, and there were still traces of snow on the ground. Al sprawled out with his face on a patch of ice and took in deep, gasping breaths, waiting for the stars to clear from his vision. When he could breathe again, Al got to his feet and looked up. The house was tall and narrow, 3 stories high, with a tower rising high above the rooftop. The color Al had seen from below was not a trick of the light. The enormous red front door was the only part that wasn't painted some hideous shade of purple. To the right of the door, an empty fuchsia bench swing rocked gently in the chill air. Even the imposing stone gargoyle that perched above on the overhang on the porch steps looked as though it had been carved from amethyst. Wearily, Al climbed the porch steps, leaning on the violet railing. There didn't seem to be a knocker, a bell, or a handle, so Al moved closer to rap on the crimson wood with his bare knuckles. "Stop!" came a booming voice that made him jump backwards. Al looked around, but he could see no one. Slowly he backed down from the porch and noticed that the gargoyle's eyes now glowed a baleful green. "He who would Erasmus see first must answer questions 3. The gargoyle's stone mouth moved as it spoke, and its eyes flickered with verdant fire. The rest of the gargoyle's body remained coldly inanimate. 3 questions? Said Al rather numbly. "What is the language of magic?" Al frowned. From what he understood, all users of magic spoke Sumerian when dealing with one another, and all scholarly books on the subject were also written in that language. But this gargoyle had asked for the language of magic, not the language of magicians. "I believe that would be runes," Al guessed. "Correct," barked the gargoyle. "Which is better, cider or root beer?" Al blinked. You can't be serious," he said. "Which is better, cider or root beer?" Al, who had never actually tasted either, having a marked fondness for tea, said with a shrug, "Cider." "Wrong," boomed the gargoyle. Al felt a strange lurching sensation in his stomach, and suddenly he was surrounded by a cloud of purple smoke. Coughing and choking, he waved the smoke away with his hands, only to find that he was standing back at the bottom of Siegburg. "You've got to be kidding me," he said, his jaw slack with astonishment. The gargoyle, now about 2 miles away, obviously did not respond. After standing at the bottom of the mountain, staring in disbelief and frustration for a full 5 minutes, Al shrugged and started back up the winding path. "Carl, are you there?" Huck called up to the guard tower. "As always," said Carl. He appeared at the low window, pushing his helmet back further over his forehead. The lines around his eyes deepened as he squinted down at Hawk. "Are you here for the stables or for the weapon master? I can't keep you two boys straight." "It's me, Hawk. I need to get into the castle keep today, actually." Carl snorted. "So you still think you can walk right into the castle, do you?" "I'm sorry, Hawk, but you must be invited by the Baron first." "This is important," insisted Hawk. "It could get the Baron his son back." Carl's expression changed immediately. He stood very straight. "You think you can get Barnard back? How? Where is he?" I don't want to say too much right now, in case it doesn't work," said Hawk. "If you have any information that would ease the Baron's sorrow," said Carl sternly, "then it would be your duty to tell me." Hawk shifted his weight reluctantly. I need something of Barnard's. It doesn't have to be valuable, it just has to belong to him. I'm going to use it to work a kind of magic." "So you are doing magic now as well as swordplay?" said Carl skeptically. Then he must have sensed Hawk's discomfort at the word swordplay, because his tone softened. "You shouldn't let the Schermeister discourage you," he said. "I've seen what you're made of, young man. In time, I'm sure you could be a fine swordsman." "I'm not really here for that now," Hawk said tensely. "I have to get the ingredients for this. Well, it seems so silly, really, but if I don't tell you, I suppose you'll have no reason to let me in. I'm making a potion to reverse an enchantment." "An enchantment?" said Carl. "You mean the Baronet is under a spell?" Hawk nodded. "We believe that the spell was cast by Baba Yaga, and this potion I'm making can supposedly cure it." Carl suddenly went pale. "Baba Yaga. I thought she left this valley long before Barnard disappeared." "She's still here," said Hawk, "or at least her hut is. I tried to get in to see her, but I couldn't. She may not even be there anymore." Carl leaned forward, dangerously close to toppling over the edge of the wall. "Now you hear me, young man," he said severely. "I know you want to be a hero, but there's a difference between being brave and being stupid. A whole slew of the Baron's guards found that out when where she was staying, and rode out when she first came to the valley, and they never returned. Not one." I just wanted to help," Hawk said lamely. "I feel it's my duty to set things right here." "I understand about duty," said Carl, nodding emphatically. "My duty is the only thing that keeps me going on in these dark times. But to know my duty is to know my place, not to risk everything by stepping outside of it." Hawk stiffened. "And I suppose you think my place is an ignorant mountain village somewhere tending sheep." "No, I didn't say that," said Carl. "It'd be a waste using that sword of yours to shear wool." His brown eyes twinkled, and he gave Hawk an appraising look. I think you'll make a fine adventurer someday. But you have to take small bites, son, or you'll choke. So you think I should make the potion instead of confronting Baba Yaga, said Hawk. Not so fast, young man, said Carl, grinning back. Remember what I told you about my duty. If I let you into the keep to go rummaging around Barnard's room, I won't have a duty to come back to. So you just find yourself some other way to get what you want without robbing the castle. You're a clever lad. You figure it out. Hawk wasn't sure how clever he was, but he certainly didn't want to say so, not with Carl beaming at him so confidently. Please let me into the keep, he said without much hope. I can't, Hawk, said Carl gently, shaking his head. Do you want to come into the castle grounds, though? You could still practice with the Scharmeister today or muck out the stables. Hawk started to refuse. He was not in a mood to see the Scharmeister today. When he suddenly had a thought. The stables. Barnard's stallion. There had to be something there. Okay, he said agreeably. Maybe I'll muck the stables today since Falcon's busy doing other things. Good, said Carl, looking pleased. Let both of us be content to do our duties. Hawk just smiled in response as Carl opened the sally port. It was true. Duty was important. Unfortunately, Hawk's duty was to filch something of Barnard's whether Carl liked it or not. As Hawk entered the courtyard, he saw the Shearmeister's shadow fencing near the barracks. As he watched the man's graceful movements, he couldn't help but feel a stab of envy. Before he knew it, he veered away from the stables and toward the elegant fighting instructor. Good afternoon, Sir Shearmeister, he said. Meister, I guess. I just wanted you to know that I've no hard feelings about our last lesson. The Shearmeister just ignored him. Hawk cleared his throat awkwardly. I apologize if I was rude to you. I get carried away sometimes. The Shearmeister just snorted disdainfully. Hawk felt his face started to heat, then just as quickly calmed himself. The fact was, it didn't matter what this pompous windbag thought of him. Everyone would feel differently about him once he had rescued Barnard. Hawk turned away without another word and crossed the courtyard. Then he crept into the stables, looking around stealthily for anything that might have belonged to the baronet. It seemed wrong to take things, but considering the use it would be put to, he wouldn't be considered a criminal, would he? You again, said a voice. Hawk jumped about 12 feet in the air and then turned. The stable master grinned at Hawk, scratching behind his ear as he moseyed into the stable. Your brother going to take on the Shearmeister again today? I could use a laugh. A rapid series of emotions assaulted Hawk. Confusion, rage, guilt, and finally, wariness. No, he said. It's just me today, and the stables look fine. You should take the day off. Grab that shovel and stop gabbing, said the stable master. At least you're better with a shovel than your brother is with a sword. Hawk picked up the shovel, his face hot. My brother is actually a very fine swordsman. He's going to be a great hero someday. The stable master snorted. That's what you always say. It was? More likely you'll be killed if you ask me. Come on, get to work. As Hawk started shoveling manure, his anger drained away at the thought of Falcon actually standing up for him. Well, my brother is not going to get killed, Hawk went on for the stable master's benefit. He's going to be a famous adventurer. That's why he has that great sword, which, Hawk faltered, looking down, which I am actually carrying for him today because he had to, go swimming in the lake and didn't want it to, so I'm keeping it for him today. It's a great honor. Put your back into it, boy, said the stable master, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. Yes, sir. The stable master watched for him for a moment with a bored expression, then sneered. Swords don't make a swordsman, as the shearmeister can tell you. He sure showed your brother, didn't he? I could bust a gut laughing. Hawk's face flamed up over again. Oh, yeah? Well... He stopped, suddenly noticing the saddle blanket that hung over the stall door. BVS, it said. Barnard von Siegburg. Hawk flung a shovelful of manure onto the blanket, trying to make as if it was an accident. Watch what you're doing, barked the stable master. If the Baron saw that, he'd be out of here on your keister, boy. Now clean that up before anyone sees what you did. Hawk walked over and made a show of examining the soiled blanket. Oh, dear, he said, doing his best to mimic Falcon's subservient tones. It looks as though I might need to launder this. The cat is back at the inn. We'll have a soap that will take care of anything out. I'll take it there and bring it back good as new. He reached for it eagerly. Don't you even think of taking that out of here, said the stable master severely. Barnard's stuff stays where it belongs. Baron's orders. Just brush it off and set it back on the stable door. Fuming, Hawk did as he was told. Seems silly to care so much about Barnard's stuff, Hawk observed, since he's dead and all. The stable master shrugged. Baron believes what he wants to believe, and no one can tell him any different. Get back to work. Don't forget that corner there. The stable master pointed, then settled down into the straw to watch. Hawk shoveled quietly for a while, wondering if perhaps the stable master would doze off as he had the first few days. Remembering it, Hawk smiled a little. It felt like 1,000 years ago that he had worked himself to death for those 5 little months to earn himself a night's rest. Now he had all the money he needed, and Shamin and Shemer were almost like family. The stable master started to yawn, and Hawk kept working in a slow, soothing, he hoped, rhythm. Hard work keeping this stable going, said the stable master with another yawn. Hawk made no comment, and finally the stable master lurched clumsily to his feet. Think I'll go put some polish on the saddles in the tack room. Don't you get lazy now while I'm gone. Hawk suppressed a shout of glee. Yes, sir, he said meekly. Once the stable master had left, Hawk gradually worked his way over to the saddle blanket, keeping one eye out for the stable master's return. At last he was close enough to touch the embroidered initials. If he could cut them loose, he could make a quick escape, and he wouldn't have to finish cleaning. Hawk gave a start as the stable master suddenly walked back in. Hawk withdrew his hand and began shoveling again with vigor. Here, boy, said the stable master. Here's your money. Don't want you disturbing me while I'm hard at work. You still got to finish the mucking before you leave, though, or else I'll take it out of your pay the next time. Thank you, sir, said Hawk, seething. He waited for the stable master to leave for good, waited a couple minutes more, then withdrew his sword. Struggling with the unwieldy blade, he used the sharp point of it to cut away the initials. Then he refolded the blanket to hide the damage, and stood for a moment in thought. He could slip out now if he wanted to. Did he really care if Falcon's pay got docked the next time? The thought of Falcon doing this every day, taking abuse from the stable master, getting blisters on his hands, and insisting all the time his brother was a great swordsman and hero. With a sigh, Hawk went back to work. And that is the end of chapter 20. If I had a mouse, I could say end stream. No, end record.